the site building work that we have done in this video course is called configuration. This includes the content types, vocabularies and terms, views, blocks layout, and everything else about the way that the site is set up. This does not include content. In this lesson, we'll go over moving configuration changes that you make in one environment to another environment. So we have our two environments here. We have our local environment where we're developing. The URL up here at the top is localhost 2. And we have our production environment, the URL being d8demosite.dd. Right now, these two sites are identical, which is intentional. It is best practice to work on your site configuration in a local environment rather than in production. Production is live to the world, and anything from enabling a module to editing a view could create conflicts or break your site if not tested first. Should this happen, you don't want the public to experience it along with you. Instead, you will do your configuration work locally or in a remote development environment, and then deploy those changes to production when you're ready. In previous versions of Drupal, this work was stored in the database. Since content is also stored in the database, it can be risky at best and stupid at worst to do work locally and then replace a production database with a development one. This is likely to lead to data or content loss. And if you have a site where users are logging in on a regular basis, especially a site such as an e-commerce site where you might be selling product, this can be disastrous. Drupal 8 makes strides towards solving this problem with configuration management. In Drupal 8, configuration information can be stored in code and can be moved using code even if it is stored in the database. Note that by default, configuration is still stored in the database. To change this or to learn more, visit drupal.org/documentation/administer/config. If you're storing your configuration in code, those configuration files are going to be stored in your site's default files directory. Let's take a look here. So sites, default, files, or if you're using multi-site, you may have a number of different sites as we have here with demosite.dd, and your configuration may actually be stored in the files directory for a specific site. In the files directory is this config directory. The word config is followed by a long hash. In here you have an active and a staging directory. Staging will contain YAML files, spelled YML, for any configuration changes that are being moved to your new site. Active will remain empty if you are storing configuration in the database. If you are storing configuration in code, then it will be full of YAML files for all of the configuration on your site. Once you are ready to move your configuration changes from one site to another, you will export your configuration and then import it into your production site. Let's see how this works. So we're going to go over to our local site, our development environment, and we're going to make a couple of changes. The first thing that we're going to do is add a content type. So under Structure, Content Types, I'm going to add a new content type. I'm not really going to do anything with this content type. It's just going to exist for the purpose of demoing the configuration. So I can really call it whatever I want, but in this case, I'm going to call it poll. I'll leave everything as it is, and then click Save and Manage Fields. And maybe I'll add another field here. Okay, so now I have a content type that exists. If I go to Content, Add Content, we'll see poll here, and if I click on it, it has a body and then it has a poll results field. On my production site, if I go under Content, Add Content, the poll content type does not exist. I'm going to make one more change on my local site to show a little bit more in terms of how these configuration management tools work. What I'm going to do is go under Blocks Layout, take a look at the blocks. I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to take Powered by Drupal, and I'm going to remove it from the content area so it's no longer displaying. It's now disabled. I'm going to go ahead and save blocks. And we'll go back to our site and take a look and make sure that this actually happened. scrolling down to the bottom here, and there's no longer a Powered by Drupal note at the very bottom of the page. If we go to our production site, go to the home page, scroll to the bottom, we see Powered by Drupal is still there. And now we're ready to move our configuration from our local environment to our production environment. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to go to our local environment, just going to double check and make sure that I am in the correct place because this is an area where I do not want to make a mistake. And then I'm going to click Configuration. Scroll down to the Development section here and click on Configuration Management. There's nothing under Synchronize because we have nothing in our staging directory for this site. What I want to do is a full export of the configuration changes that have been made on the local site, which I will then import into the production site. So I'm going to click on that. It defaults to import. I want to be careful here because I don't want to accidentally import changes from somewhere else into this version. And I'm going to click Export. The Export button here is going to take all of the configuration work and export a config file that I can then move over to production. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. Now a file is being created and downloaded. I'm going to head over to the Finder to see this particular file. And here it is in the downloads directory, config.tar.gz. We'll go back to my site here. Okay, now I'm going to head over to production. I'm going to confirm that I am now on production. I'll go under Configuration, scroll down to Configuration Management in the development box, and now I want to import, full import, same thing that I did from local, but on local I was doing an export, and on production I'm doing an import. So now I'm going to choose my file, and I need to find that downloads file, open that, and click Upload. This is not going to make the changes on my site. It's simply going to prepare the changes that have been made. So notice that I've jumped over now to the Synchronize tab, and I have a list of all of the changes that are waiting to be moved to the new site. Some of these are new configuration. These are from the content type that I created, which doesn't exist currently on production. And some are changes. This is for the block that I removed. It's changing something that exists in both environments. I can take a look at the differences between production and the staged changes so that I know what's happening. And that way I can confirm that the changes that I'm bringing in are ones that I actually want. Now let's also take a quick look at the directory structure. And you'll see that the staging directory now has a whole lot of YAML files in it. These are YAML files for every configuration option on the site, including the ones that are changed. We'll head back to the site now and click the big Import All button at the bottom because we know that we do actually want these changes to be moved to the production site. It's going to take a moment for the synchronization to happen. Okay, now that the synchronize is completed, let's take a look and see if the changes have actually come into our production site. So we're going to go back to Site. And the first thing I'm going to check is the very visible one. I'm going to scroll to the bottom and see if the little Drupal block has been removed, and it has. The next thing I'm going to do is go to Content, Add Content, and see if my content type exists, which it does. I'll click on that, and I can see that all of the fields that I set are right there. So this worked perfectly. My production site and my development site are now in sync with each other. Note that you cannot import configuration from any random site. The two sites must have started out as clones from each other. You can also take small pieces of configuration, such as a content type. So to do this, you would use single import-export instead of full import-export. And you would head over to the Export tab here, and then under Configuration Type, for example, if you wanted to do content type, you would make that selection here. And then you would select which content type you wanted to export. The code will be added here. You can take this, copy it, and then head over to your target site under Configuration, Configuration Management, Single Import Export, select Content Type, and then paste your configuration. Finally, you'll click Import, and it'll move this configuration into your target site. Since these are all YAML files, they can be stored in Git and version controlled. This helps when working with large teams and is a best practice, but using Git is not part of this video course. In this lesson, we looked at the configuration management tool in Drupal 8, which enables us to quickly move configuration from one environment to another, such as our local development environment to our production environment.